Can you hear me now? Hello? Hello? Okay, nice, okay. Earbuds are screwed up. Okay, so we have a few prerequisites for today. Let's go over those. So we're only going to be using two pieces of software throughout the entire event. Visual Studio Code, which is an IDE for programming multiple languages. And since we'll be testing web applications later using Python, we're going to be using Google Chrome primarily. So I think most of you probably have Chrome installed already, but if you don't already have VS Code installed, please install VS Code on your operating system. And yeah, I'll leave the Python installation to Daniel to talk about later. But before that, I need you guys to go and clone this repo. Go to this repo, click download the code, and then set it up on your local computer. So, for example, if this is the share my screen. My screen. Okay, if you guys can't hear me, just let me know in the chat, yeah? So, okay. So we have the repo here with instructions on how to run it. So go ahead, just click download the zip file of the code. We've already prepared the skeleton for you. Download it. Okay, show it in your Finder. Okay. Unzip the thing. Copy it, and I'm going to put it in my desktop. I'm going to put this in my desktop here. Okay, so I should have this particular folder with introduction to Python, introduction to Flask, the DSC logo, and also the README file with all the instructions to run. Okay, so if you've done this so far, let me just make a poll for this. I've made a poll, so just go ahead and just run it there if you've already created the clone repo. Okay, 11 people so far. So yeah, guys, got a minute for this. If you know any particular reason why you guys can't access the repo, or just let me know in the chat any problems. There's 75 people on call. Only 27 have voted. Okay, sure. I'll go again. Okay, so we have this link right here. If you don't already have it, let me just put it again. Yes. Okay, so just click on the link. You will go to our GitHub repository. So you can see the README file right here with instructions on how to run and set it up. And you can actually explore the code here. So all our notebooks and the code we've already prepared for you. So you can see the code. So what we want you to do now is to set this up in your local environment. So go to code, click download the zip file. Okay, download it to the location of your choice, save it, and then once it's inside the Finder, you extract the thing, and then you have all the code ready for your local manipulation. So now you can open this inside your code editor and then edit the files. So if you're with me so far and you've downloaded the code, please let me know in the poll. And don't be shy to ask if you have any questions. Okay, so considering that's okay, let me first. So now we have it in our desktop. So you have the folder in your desktop, right? If you've reached this far, then you're already good. Now we'll just move on to the actual Python installation stuff. And for this, I'll pass it on to Daniel. Take over from now.
Okay, hello, hello, hello. Can everyone
Audible, audible,
hear?
yeah.
Hello, hello. Yep. Okay, cool, cool. Right. So, um, yeah, let me set it. Okay. Can you go to the next slide? Yeah. Okay. So before we get into the before we actually start, hi, good morning. I'm Daniel. So I'll be the one who will be handling the first session, which is the introduction to Python. And yeah, before we get started, so let me give you some brief overview about what is Python for those who really don't have an idea what Python is. So basically, Python is a programming language. It's an interpreted language. So what that means is each line of code is being converted into machine code and is executed right away. So on the other hand, for like let's say other compiled language like C++, C, Java, so the step involves the compilation of source code, and then you will get an object file which later will be used by the linker, okay, to link each libraries they are being used, and finally we can get the executable file. So in Python, the step for us to actually run the program is actually simple, right? Because Python is an interpreted language. So next up, one fun fact about Python is the one I really like is Python is dynamically typed. Can I go back to yeah? Okay, Python is dynamically typed. So what that means is dynamic typing is actually when you don't need to explicitly specify what the variable types are, but instead they are determined during the runtime execution. So this might be good news for some and bad news for others. But rest assured that if you know what you're doing, then this won't be really affecting your workflow in Python. And lastly, Python also support multiple paradigms like the standard procedure programming, top to bottom, and object-oriented programming where there are classes and objects and inheritance, and also functional programming. Next. Next slide, please. The previous one. All right, yeah. So some people might ask why Python? Why not other languages? So one is Python works in multiple platforms such as Windows, Mac, and also Linux. And the syntaxes in Python is really easy to grasp compared to other languages like C and Java. But this does not necessarily mean that Python is superior than those two, or in fact any other programming languages that has really hard syntaxes. And finally, since Python is an interpreted language, so developer can straight away see the output of each line of their code and make changes if necessary. So yeah, next slide. Yeah, before we actually begin, firstly, obviously we need to install Python. So the version of Python that we'll be using is 3.9.7. So we've standardized this version so that we don't have any errors conflicting with within all of us, so that the debugging process is much more easier, the troubleshooting process. And yeah, for the link, you can go to, let me copy the link. I pasted the link in chat. So you can click on that link and it will open a page to download Python 3.9.7. And when you scroll down, you can see a files section. When you scroll down, you can see a file section, and just choose. Let's say if you're on Windows or Mac OS, or let's say Linux or whatever, then just choose which method that and which operating system they are using. Let's say if you are using Windows, then choose the Windows installer for 64 bits. Yeah, same goes for Mac and also the Linux. Yeah. Okay, once you have it installed, um, yeah, Siddharth, can you put a poll on checking how whether they have installed it or not? Finish installing, just installing and not run the setup first. Okay, yeah. So a poll has just been, three
Please
point
hold the
nine
folders.
point six.
That's fine. That's
Yeah,
fine.
it's
Okay.
yeah, that's fine. That's fine.
By the way, if
Yeah, so for those who have finished installed the setup file, then you can just go ahead and answer the poll.
so for those of you who already have Python installed in your laptop, you don't need to reinstall it entirely. Unless you have something like Python 2.0, then you have to reinstall Python 3. But if you already have something like Python 3.6, 3.7, then it's already fine. You can just stick to what you have. Yeah, 3.8 is fine. 3.8 is fine. Don't worry. As long as it's not like 3.1, 3.2, or 2 point something, then it's a problem. Anything above 3.7 already nothing much changed there.
Yep. Okay, so there are 44 people who have finished installing Python, and okay, so yeah, I'm going to present my screen now, just to show 3.9.7. Yeah, okay. Right. So for those who have just installed, sorry, oh my god. For those who have just installed, I'm going to show you like the step on how to like actually run the setup properly so that there's no more error after this. Okay, is my screen visible? All right, can see. Yeah, okay, nice. So once you have the setup file, then just double click on it, and then you will see this page. All right. Before you click install now, make sure to check this add Python 3.9 to path. Okay, so that we can actually call it from the command line or the CMD or whatever terminal you're using, right? And after you have this check, then you can finally press install now. So just wait for it to install. Give me a moment. Okay, yeah. So if your setup is successful, then you will see this page. If not, then you won't be seeing this page. Oh my god. So, all right. So yeah, once it is done, then you can just close, and just to like check whether you have your, it's a zip file, you do not get the setup. In the link that I've shared just now, yeah, in the link that I shared just now, you scroll down to here. Then if you are, let's say if you are using Windows, then you just click on Windows installer, this one, then it will straight away install like an executable setup file. Yeah, an exe. Yeah, all right. Okay, so for those who have finished installing, so what you can do to check your Python installation is go on to your Windows and press Windows key and R for run and type in CMD, or you can just search it from here, CMD. Yeah, CMD, right? And you can just type in Python here. If you type in Python and your prompt is not displaying Python 3.9.7 or whatever version you are using, then you have to probably your Python is not linked to your path, so you need to get that settled first. And yeah, if your prompt came out like this, then yeah, congrats, you have successfully installed your Python. So yeah, I'll see this page. All right. Okay, then once we have that settled, then we can finally move on to the actual
Just
introduction.
maybe put in the code if you guys can access Daniel showed, right, the Python command line. Just put in the poll if you can access it already.
Yeah, I'm going to wait for a while. Okay, 16, 17 votes. Can say again, show the Python in the CMD. You mean you want to see how to check Python in CMD? So you just go to start, type in CMD, right? Open your CMD, then you just type in Python, and this prompt should be available. Yeah, you can also try Python dash version. So this will print out the Python version. If your Python is incorrectly installed or it's not listed in your path, then this thing won't show up. Let's see the polls. I have 3 people that have not working Python installation. May I know what are the problems that these 3 people? Yep. Okay, sure. Right. So yeah, so for those who have problem installing Python, you can go on to the mid link. Right. So for those who have successfully installed your Python and can see the prompt, then what you should do now is go to the repo that you have cloned just now, which is this folder. Okay. Go on, open up the introduction to Python, and you'll see 2 files. One is sample-data.csv, and another one is Python crash course.ipy notebook. Okay, so in this session, we'll be using a Jupyter notebook. So a Jupyter notebook is basically just application that allows editing and running codes, Python codes, like on the go. Right. So whenever you run one cell, then you can straight away see the outputs. Right. So before we can actually use the IPython notebook, so we have to open up this file. Okay, open up the crash course. Okay, so in here you'll see some empty cells and some text. Okay, so for those who can wait, let me create a poll. No, I can create a poll. Siddharth, can you create a poll for those who can actually view this file, or for those who who don't have this file, then you can go to our can go to our GitHub just now. Okay, this is a repeat. For those who don't have this file, you can go to our GitHub and download the zip folder, right? And inside the zip folder, you should see two more folders, Introduction to Flask and Introduction to Python. And show them how to open the file via VS Code. Yeah, true. Okay, so for those who don't have VS Code by default as your editor, so what you can do is you can firstly open your VS Code, right? See, okay, so by default your VS Code should look something like this, right? So to make it easier, may I know how to clone a repository? Um, when you open this file, and when you open the link, okay, our GitHub link, so you'll see there's a green button that says code. Press on it, press download zip. Yeah, so when you press the download zip, so you will actually get all these 4 files downloaded to your laptop. Right. Okay. Yeah, continue back. Yeah, so for those who are that don't have the VS Code as their default editor, so never mind. You can just open up VS Code, press on File, draw Open File, or in fact, let's just open the folder, right? So in this case, go to our Python. Python study gem folder, right, and open up Introduction to Python. Right. When you open the files, then you should see two more, and when you open the folder, you should see 2 more files on your navbar, or not navbar, on your Explorer. Okay. Then just press on one of them. Not one of them. Just press on the Python Crash Course IPy notebook. All right. So if you have successfully open this folder, you should see this prompt right here. For those who never actually use Jupyter Notebook before, then you should see this prompt. I have this prompt on because I have uninstalled everything. So that's why I'm seeing this prompt. So everything that asks you to install regarding Jupyter or Python, just install it. So in this case, VS Code is telling me to install Jupyter. All right. And then it also prompts me to install a Python extension. This one is just for linting, right? IntelliSense, just basically autocomplete. All right, so I have both of them installed. Okay, so I can just close this. Yeah, okay, enable that. All right, then once you have successfully installed, then the prompt will say something like this: Python extension is now installed. And just press OK, close the extension page. Now we can get back to the IPy notebook. All right, so until now, anyone have any problem to this point? Yeah, thanks, Wate. Okay, good to go. Right. Okay, so for those who have any problems, then yeah, feel free to voice out your problem here or in Discord or in the separate meet link while I'm waiting for others to finish. All right, so I'm going to give another brief overview of what we'll be seeing today, right? Oh, if you already have Jupyter Notebook, then just ignore this step. Yeah, you don't have to download again. Yep, you just ignore what I've just said just now. What I've said just now is for those who never use Jupyter Notebook in VS Code before. If you are using, for now, no, but for later, we'll be using, yeah, the virtual environment is only for Flask. Yep. Okay, so for those who use a standalone Jupyter Notebook, by that I mean in browser where you open localhost port 8000 or something, then yeah, feel free to also use that. But I'm using VS Code just because it's pretty, and I'm used to using VS Code. And also, yeah, it doesn't have to be inside VS Code if you're already using Jupyter. But for those who are new to Jupyter Notebook, so yeah, I suggest you guys to use the ones in VS Code. If you want to check, then you can press on extensions. Then you can just type in Jupyter here on the extension. Then you press on the top one, which is from Microsoft, 26 million download. Then you check whether it is installed or not. Then other than that, when you install this one, the other two should also be installed together. When you press install on this one, two of them will be automatically installed. Jupyter Key Map and Notebook Renderer. So if you have all this and also the Python linter, that one is just for autocomplete. And yeah, you're good to go. All right. So yeah, assuming everyone is okay to this point, then just go to above the welcome to Python introductory session. Okay, above this text, hover, then you will see two buttons, plus code and plus markdown. I need you to press on plus code, okay, to enter a new cell, right? Then you just type a simple print hello world. Okay, once you are done, you can press Control Enter, or by right, just push, just press on this play button. Yeah, so it will say something like connecting to kernel. And if you have set up everything correctly to this point, then you should see the output here. Instead of hello world, let's say hello DSC. Yeah. Is everyone okay to this point? Where to download Jupyter Notebook? No run button. Have you opened this file? Then if you open this file, then it should prompt you to install the Jupyter extension. Do you guys have that? The okay, let me uninstall it back. Right. Yeah, so by right, when you open this file, after you have installed Python, then you open this Jupyter Notebook, then when you press run, then either when you press this one, either it will ask you to install kernel from Marketplace or a prompt will come up. Both of these are actually achieving the same thing. They are just installing the Jupyter extension. Then click on install. Then yeah, once you have all these three installed, then you can run the code. Let's see again. Command for run, you can either press Control Enter or alternate Enter, or you can press the button here. You can press the play button here. Yeah, if it say that you just install anything that the VS Code asks you to install. IPyKernel is required for us to run this thing. You're unable to install the IPyKernel. Yeah, if you have any problem, then you can just go to the another Google Meet that Siddharth just shared. That one is just a warning. You don't actually have to install the latest version to use Notebook. Yep. Repeat for which part? On the command. Which command? Oh, the shortcut key to run this cell, yeah, is Control plus Enter. Begin number 2, okay. Then I press Control Enter, then it will run. Okay, if the install kernel, it will automatically prompt you to install. Okay, so if any of those like didn't show up, then what you can do is you can press Control Shift P in VS Code. So it will open up this palette. So type for reload, type in reload, right? So you will see the developer reload window. Yeah, press on that. So it will basically refresh your VS Code. And by that time, any prompt should come out by this. If it didn't show up also, then what you have to do now is you have to close your VS Code and then reopen the VS Code. And then it will show up. Okay, yeah, restart VS Code works. All right, nice. It's one thing is actually Control plus Shift plus P. Plus P. Yeah, but then type in reload, developer reload window, then prompt should show up. Yeah, okay. Okay, yeah. Okay, so for those who can see, who can actually, no, the key is just a typo. It's actually plus P, the letter P. P as in Penang. So it should be Control plus Shift plus P. All right. So for those who can actually view the output of the cell, so I think it's time for us to proceed on. Okay, so while waiting, I'm assuming you guys have read this text. So basically, we'll cover all these things. So ranging from starting how to create variables, then what data types are there in Python, then lists, tuples, sets, dictionaries, if-else statements, loops, functions, lambda functions, and how to use libraries. And finally, we'll cover a bit of classes and OOP, right? So yeah, let's get started then. Right. So first one is variables. We're going to talk about variables. So as I mentioned just now in the slides, so types are not required when declaring a variable. So that means it's not the same as like let's say Java or C or C++, where you have to define integer A equals to 15, let's say, and you need to have a semicolon at the end. But in Python, you don't need that. So what you need is actually just write the name of the variable. Let's say I want A, then put an equal sign, then put a number, right? No semicolon, nothing, right? So here is how you assign value to a variable, right? So this one is integer, right? A equals to 2, 2 is integer, right? So let's say if you want to define a string, right? So you can either put it in a single colon or a double colon, both works fine. So let's say, hi, my name is Daniel, right? So this one is an example of a string, right? And also if you see some grayed out letter is my GitHub Copilot, you can just ignore that, right? It's suggesting me stuff, right? So this one is how we write a string. We can also write a string like this in a single quotes hi. It's a string, right? It just works fine, right? And yeah, this is how we actually define assign value to variables. Okay. So and also similar with like previous, if you want to run a cell, you can just press Control Enter, right, or the run button, right. Next up is there are some rules, okay, in naming variables. So the first rule is no number should be placed in the beginning of a variable name. So let's say I want to create a variable called name. but instead of the name, I name it as, okay, let's not name lah. I want to create a variable called address. Okay, but then in the beginning, I put a number, I say 10, right? And then I assign it to something. Let's say 123 Main Street. Okay. So this, if I actually run this, it will return an error because there's a number in front of the variable, right? So let's run this. It'll say, yeah, invalid syntax. Okay. Next up is there should be no dashes. So let's say if I want to write full name, I want to create a variable called full name. So should be full dash name, right? And let's say student, all right? So this will also give me an error, right? Because there shouldn't be any dashes. And finally, let's say I want to create a variable called last name, right? There shouldn't be any spaces in between variable names. So instead of like writing code like this, right? So not writing code, instead of naming your variable like this. So how you can fix this is by firstly not having the number in the beginning, right? Address equals to 123 Main Street. Okay. And instead of full dash name, so what you can do is you can either write it full underscore name, right? Or you can write it in a camel case, so full and then capital N name, or write it however you want, as long as it doesn't involve any dashes. And same goes for the last name. You can either concatenate it and change it to a camel case, or just use this all small letter or put underscore. But yeah, this one should work fine. Okay, so is anyone clear with the variable naming convention? The rules, how to define a variable. Is anyone clear? Can repeat again the first step. You mean how to declare a variable? Is your problem solved? Can you run this thing? So to check if you can use Jupyter Notebook, then you create a new cell. So initially, when you open the file, you will see "Welcome to the Python introductory session." Okay, this text. You hover on top of it, then you should see two buttons: plus code and plus markdown. Press on plus code, and you should see a black box here, right? But then you can type inside it. Okay, so for you to run something to test, then you can just type in print and then parentheses, put a code inside, and then type something. Okay, and then for you to run it, you can just press Control Enter. If you see this output, then that means you're good to go. Yep. So yeah, that's the first step. Okay, so is that okay? Lo Yahweh, do you need any other
Sorry,
help?
how
Yeah.
to run? Can say again. How to run the hello?
You press Control and Enter. So
Okay.
yes, CTRL plus Enter. CTRL, yeah, CTRL plus Enter. Okay. So yeah, can you see the prompt?
I press Control Enter. It just like going down.
It's just going down.
Yeah.
You mean like this?
No, it just like a space bar and then just going enter down.
Yeah. You can try Control, Alternate, and Enter.
Okay.
See what happens. Is it working now?
Trying.
And also make sure that on the top right corner, if you are in VS Code, there should be a Python 3.9.7 64-bit or whatever version that you have installed your Python. So this one is basically your kernel, your Python version. Yeah. Okay, so yeah, if any other problem, then you can just type in the chat. So I'm going to just continue, right? So next up we are moving on to the data types now. So we have the first data types that I'm going to go into is strings. Okay, so basically string are just an array of character, right? So hello world. So this is a string, right? So let's try printing this out. So for us to print a variable, so we can just write print and open and close parentheses, and inside the parentheses we put the variable name that we wanted to print. So in this case, I have A. I have stored the string inside the A, and I'm printing the A out. So if I run this, to print out hello world, right? So let's create another variable. Okay, this time with double quotes. Let's say it's Daniel, right? So let's try printing another variable called B, right? Press Control Enter. So it'll print out my name is Daniel. Okay, so that is string. And just now I mentioned that string is an array of character. So what does that mean is it actually consists of all of the characters being shoved into one container, and that container is visualized as a string. So just imagine that we have a string called C. Okay, I just put my name, Daniel. Okay, so it's actually something like this. It's actually an array of a single character, right? DANIEL. Okay, and then it's visualized as a string. Okay, so that's just it. And based on this known fact, so we can call each of the letter in the string by using their index. Okay, what do I mean by index is for those who know how array works, so array is basically just a container, and it starts counting from 0. Okay, so in this case I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I have 6 elements in this not 6 elements, 6 letters in this string. So the position of each letter in this string starting from 0, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All right. So let's say I want to print out the first character of my name. So I can just write print, right, parentheses, then write C, which is the name of variable. Then I append the 2 square brackets. So these 2 square brackets are for arrays, are for lists. Okay. So inside the square bracket, I put the index. So let's say I want to print the first index, which is index number 0, right? So print C0. So when I control enter, so it print out D. So we'll go through the list later on, but then just this one is just showing you how that a string is actually an array of characters, right? So to use strings, there are like multiple of helper function or utility function that we can use, okay, to ease up our work in case we're using it. So let's say let's imagine where we have a string called hello world, okay, but there are spaces at the back and spaces at the front. Okay, then let's say we are required to remove the spaces. So how do we do that? How can we do that? Right. So we can just there's a function called strip in Python, strip, right? So what the strip do is basically remove any beginning or trailing spaces from a string. Oops, I forgot to plug in my charger, right? All right. Okay. So yeah. So basically, strip removes the any trailing or starting spaces, right? So in this case, let me just print out d dot strip. Okay. Let me remove that. Right. Print open parentheses d, put a dot, and then write strip strip is a function, so that's why we need to have the open and close parentheses here. And so if we print this, we cannot actually visualize the spaces being deleted because we are printing it here. So one way of visualizing it is to actually print the length of the string. So let's create another string called let's create another variable called no spaces. Okay, and then we assign d.strip. Okay, so d.strip here will refer to string d that have no spaces in the start and end. Right. So now when we print d and we print no spaces, print two of this, then you can actually see that d have like, it starts out a bit weird. It starts out a bit indented because there's a space here, but in no spaces, then it starts actually here. So there's no beginning spaces and no end spaces also. And another way of verifying it actually remove the spaces is you can print the length of it. You can print the length of these two variables. So how do we find the length of the variables is by using len. Okay, len stand for length. Okay, so here it's length, right? So len, and then you open and close parentheses. Inside here, you put whatever you want to find the length of. So in this case, let's just run. So d has a size of 13.
Daniel,
Yes.
could you slow down a bit?
Yeah, sure. Right.
I want to ask about the no spaces, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the no spaces, there will be no space in the beginning of hello, correct?
Yeah. And also the end of it.
At the end also.
Yeah.
Okay. What about the strip? What is strip used for?
Strip is used to remove the spaces.
Oh, okay. Wait. Okay. All right. Thank you.
Right. Cool. Right. So okay, we can also print the length of the no spaces variable. Okay, so that we can see. So in B we have 13 element of 30. Can you strip the space in the middle since strings are essentially an array? You can strip it, but then it's considered a character being squished in the middle instead of just white spaces when it's placed in the beginning or at the end. Yeah. How to have a function like endline in C++? Endline is basically just what can you repeat that? Wait, let me answer the endline first. So if you want to have endline in Python, you can just append the \n. \n stands for a new line, right? But in Python, every time we call the print function, it will automatically prints it in the new line. So if you want to make it tidy, then you can just print with empty. You don't have to put anything inside the parentheses. So you can have something like this. We print the D, and then we print empty, and then we print no spaces. If I run this, then there's actually like an extra space like in the middle. If you wanna, yeah. And also, yeah, to repeat, I'm assuming the strip does not remove the white space in the middle because it's actually considered a character. I mean, all of them are considered a character, but the starting and the ending is considered as a like legit useless white space. So that's why. And as you can see, when we actually print the length of the D and the no spaces, so you can actually see a decrease of 2. So that means 2 spaces have been removed. Right.
I want to ask what is the descript means.
D.strip.
Yeah.
D.strip is you take the D variable, okay, and
Okay.
you append the strip function to it. You use the strip function on the string. So D.strip. Yeah. Do you get that?
Understand.
All right, nice. Right. So are you guys okay with the strings? Any other question to ask? For now, all good. All right. So move on. We have a few more utility functions. Like let's say if I have a string of lowercase words like e equals to Daniel Charles Studio. All right. So all of these are written in lowercase. Let me just remove just comment this out. Okay. All of these are in lowercase, right? So in Python, there's another utility function for us to convert the whole string from lowercase to uppercase, right? So how do we do that is by we print, okay, e dot u pper, and then close parentheses, open and close parentheses. Yeah. So print e dot upper. This one will basically convert every letter, every character in the string to an uppercase letter. So if I print this out, you will see my name, instead of being written in a lowercase, it's now in an uppercase, right? So same goes if you have, let's say I have a string of, okay, all written in capital, right, uppercase. So we can also print it in, and we can also convert from uppercase to lowercase. So how do we do that? Is f dot lower, lower, and open and close parentheses. Right.
Can I ask if after the this section can send the completed this for us?
Yeah, we have already prepared it, but it's not accessible to you guys right now. So
Yeah.
yeah, don't worry about that. We're
Okay.
going to provide you guys the whole code.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. So that's uppercase and lowercase, right? But actually, it doesn't matter if in here, let's say I have a capital I, okay, in my E, right? Every letter is a lowercase except for the I. When I run this code, it will still be the same. So it's technically converting everything to uppercase, right? Okay, so that's upper and lowercase. Now let's move on. We have two more utility function that might be important, right? So next one is how to split a string. Okay, so imagine if I have um hi yeah, hi, my name is Daniel. Okay, so this one is a string, right? So imagine, let's say in any cases, let's say you want to split each of the words into a single, like you want to split it so that it's not a sentence, right? So how can we do that? Is by using g dot split, right? So g dot split is basically splits every word into a individual element in an array. So let's print g dot split out. So print from parentheses g dot split. Okay, let's run this. So as you can see, instead of a string array, instead of a string, now it's a string array. It's an array containing strings. So hi, my name is Daniel. It's an individual element, right? And other than split, we have join. Okay, join is basically to reverse the process of split, right? So let's say we have see h equals to hi, h equals to hi, then I equals to my, J equals to name, K equals to is, L equals to Daniel. Okay, I'm just using autocomplete because I'm too lazy to write all this. Yeah, but then you get the idea. So let's say we have 5 individual words that we want to concatenate together and change this to a string. So what we can do is we can just let's say we want to store it inside a result. Okay, so we want let's take an empty string. Okay, so results equals to an empty string for now, and then we can append. We can write dot, okay, and then join dot join, right? Then we open and close parentheses. Okay, so what we are joining is, what we are concatenating is belonging inside the parentheses. So what do we write inside parentheses? We open and close square brackets, right? We open and close square brackets, and we just write everything that we want to concatenate. In this case, HIJKL. Right. So each of them are separated in a comma, by a comma. So H, comma, I, comma, J, comma, K, comma, L. Right. So what this basically do is it will concatenate every word from these 5 variables. So if you want to see, we can just print the result. I press Ctrl Enter to run. Let me stop. Right, yeah. So it's basically concatenating all of the single words, okay, into a string. But then it looks a bit bad because there are no spaces. If join is basically just join without any like extra spaces or what. If you want, then you have to manually add in the spaces. So hi space, my space, name, then space, is space, and Daniel. And if you run this again, then you'll see it properly spaced in between them. Yeah. So
Daniel, how to get this space?
how to get the space? You basically manually add it by your
Oh, okay.
All right. Okay, so yeah, at this point in time, Siddharth, can we have a poll for if is any of you guys lost currently? Do you guys have any problem? Then you can just answer in the poll, so I can get back to you. Is it compulsory to put variable inside the bracket? You mean inside the print for the join function? Oh, inside the square bracket, you mean? If you don't, then this thing will happen. Yeah, so it is compulsory for it to be an array. For the join function, is it different to like h plus I? Basically, you can do that. So let's say I want to plus h plus L, and no semicolon. Yeah, it's basically returning you the same stuff. And I just want to show you that there is a function for you that you can use instead of using plus. You can concatenate multiple strings with plus.
Do we have to put semicolon at the back? Is that okay?
No, you don't. No, you don't. Right. Now it's back result. Okay, so yeah. Yes. Yeah, poll. Siddharth, can we get a poll for is everyone clear until this point?
I want to ask about what is the difference about the uppercase, that one, like the H1 you need to use the two marks, that one. Why and some is using the just only the one?
There's practically no difference. As I mentioned previously at the in here, to define a string, you can either enclose it in the single quotation mark or double quotation mark.
Okay, understand.
Okay, so anyone else have any problem? Yeah, just ask away. If no, then I'm going to continue. I'm going to move on to the next one, which is list. When does until now I've been using Python. I haven't seen a difference. So the one benefit of using single quotes and double quotes is, let's say let's create a new cell. This one I just show. Let's say I want to create a string. String equals to, okay, let's say I'm using a double quotes. Okay, then let's say hello, welcome to let's see, right? Say you want to enclose this KFC inside inside a quotation mark. right? In other languages where single quotation means a single quotation is used only to define characters and double quotation is used to define string, so you cannot do things like this. But in Python you can, right? So you can use them in this is one of the benefits of using single quotes and double quotes. You can also change it to vice versa. So let's say you are using the single quotes to define your to enclose your string. So hello welcome to, but inside here is double quotes of KFC. Okay. What? So instead of double quotes, then yeah, you can have, and instead of single quotes, then you can have double quotes. Yeah, this is the fun thing about this. What is the this thing at the start of join? Yeah, it's an empty string. Yep, correct. We are joining empty string with HIJKL via the join method. Yeah. Okay. Any other questions? Yeah, I'm assuming everyone is okay with strings. So if all good, then we can move on to lists. Okay, so in Python, in other languages, you'll hear about arrays. Okay, you hear about arrays, but in Python we call that lists. So it's basically just array. Yeah. So what you see here, everything that enclosed in a square bracket is considered a list. If I hover over it, okay, it doesn't have here. Okay, but then yeah, everything that is enclosed in the square bracket is considered a list, right? So in lists, we can contain, we can have duplicates values, okay, and it is ordered and it is also mutable, right? So yeah, ordered and mutable might be new, might be a new term. So what does ordered mean? We'll see later. And what is mutable? So mutable means that you can change the value of it after you have defined a variable. So let's say here, L, if I want to change the value of L, then I can change it. So that means L, the variable L is mutable. Yeah. So how do we actually define a list in Python? So let's say, let's create a variable called X, okay? Then equals, then I put a square bracket. And then inside the square bracket is where every element belongs to. So let's say I want to store an array of numbers. So let's put 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Right. So every elements are separated by the commas, right? So as you can see here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Right. So this just a basic list. So you can try printing this out. So as you can see, it prints as a list. Okay. And list does not have to be a list of integer. It can be a list of strings also. Let's say y equals to pi. Yeah, as a same as the previous example. It can be a list of strings. It can be a list of floating points number. Let's say 1.4, 2.3. It can also be a list of booleans, which is Tuples. So false. Okay. And also it can be a list of lists. Okay, let's say I have a list, and inside the list I'm storing another list, something like this. So yeah, it's pretty flexible if you ask me. So you can store multiple things, multiple kinds of data type. And also one more thing that is special in Python. Yeah, I think there's other way to do this in other programming languages. But in Python, you can store different kinds of different data types, variables, values inside a single list. So in this case, I'm storing integers and this one technically a character, but then let's change it to a string. Yeah, right. So I'm storing integer and a string inside. So if I print that out, so it will print just fine. That's going to it is going to run just fine. There's no error about this, right? So and same goes if I print y. Okay, y is like this. Then print Y, print Z, print A, and print B, right? So in this case, we have the first line here is Y, then this one is Z, which is the floating point. Right? Here is the true false. Here is a list of lists. So a list of lists. A nested list, right? So we'll see this nested list later on when we are using NumPy, which is a library. Okay. Yeah, and yeah, something about the ordered this. I've mentioned that a list is ordered, so that means we can call it by the indexes, right? So let's say I want to use this array for now. I want to use this list for now, list Y. Okay, so I can call each of their elements by indexes. So let's comment this out, right? So the height here belongs to index 0, my belongs to index 1, name is 2, and name is 2, is 3, Daniel is 4, right? So their indexes is basically their location in a list, basically. So how do we call it? So we can just print Y, right? And then the square bracket. So the square bracket, what goes inside the square bracket is their index. So let's say I want to print the third element, which is the index number 2. So you notice that the third element, their index is their number of element minus 1, because it start counting from 0 instead of start counting from 1. Okay, so I want to print the word name. So here the index should be 2. If I run this, it will print out name. Okay. Let's say I want to print out Daniel. So print Y4. So it displays Daniel, right? Let's say I want to print multiple stuff. I want to print hi, my name, right? Just those 3. So there are 2 methods. So one method is you can go print Y0 and then copy, paste it multiple times, right? And then print Y1 and print Y2. So this one will achieve hi, my name, right? But in Python, we have something called slicing. Okay, SLICING, slicing, or just slice. Okay, so this slice is used for printing to fetch multiple stuff from a range. So let's say I want to print hi my name. Oh, sorry, hi my name. I want to print out these 3. So we need to take note of their indexes. So 0, 1, and 2. So how do we print that? Is let me comment this out for a while. Right. So how do we do that? It's by Y square bracket as usual. Okay, and then we put the starting index, which is 0, right? And then we put a colon. Let me put a colon. Wait, can I turn off my? Yeah, let me turn off my Copilot for a while. Right. So 0 colon, okay, and then the n element. So the n element in this case is 2, but then the 2, the n element here in slice is not included. So we have to increment it by 1. Print 0 to 3. So we print this, and if we slice an element, it will not print out individually, it will just slice it off. Just imagine you are only taking 0, 1, 2 from this list and then printing it out. That's why it is printing in an array instead of printing out single words like just now, like this. Yeah. So this one is basically slicing a list. This one is printing each individual elements. Right. So let's say now I want to print from my name is Daniel, right? So that means I have to print from index 1 until index 4. But then since the last value here, we need to add 1 because it is not included, right? So 1, 2, 4 plus 1, which is 5, right? And print this. So let me comment this. Yeah, if you print that Y1 colon 5, then it will print out my name is Daniel. Okay, and for this, there's another method of slicing, which is a bit easier, right? So instead of writing 1 until 5, and we know that we want to print from this element until the end of the list, so we can just write something like print Y square bracket, right? Our starting element, which is 1, and then just put colon. Let me comment this out. Yeah, 1 and then colon, and then yeah, just put nothing. So if we don't have any numbers here, so it will assume that we want to print anything. We want to print from 1 until the end of the list. So let's try it out. Yeah, it's basically going to print out the same thing. Let's add a few more stuff here. And I can hungry, right? Let's run this. So as you can see, I didn't change any of the index here since there is no index here. So it will print out from position 1 until the end of the list. So my name is Daniel and I'm hungry, right? But in this case, if I print out the 1:5, it will just print out my name is Daniel, because 5 is not the end of the array anymore, since I have added more elements inside. Right. Same goes if you want to print from the start. Okay. Is it possible to remove the square bracket when printing? Basically you can store this. Wait. Size equals to y. So I want to print 1 till the end. Right. Yeah, you can either do that. So let's try doing that. So we have the slice. Oh wait, slice just now is this. Then we can print this and join y. Yeah, since there are no spaces inside here, so yeah, that's why it's merged together like this. But yeah, since when we slice, we are returning a segment of the array. So basically a subset of the, not a subset, it's basically returning a sub array, sub list in this case you want to call it. Yep. Right. So back to this one. Okay, so same goes if you do something like y 1:the end, 1:nothing. So you basically print from 1 until the end of the list. But if let's say you want to print from the start of the array, the start of the list until like this now. This one just prints out. Okay, this one just prints out, hi, my name is Daniel. Okay, from 0 until element 4. Right. Instead of writing this 0, if you're too lazy, you can also ignore the first thing. You can also ignore the starting location. Since if you don't have any values here, it will assume that you want to start from the beginning. So if I run this one more time, yeah, it will basically print out the same thing. Right. Now, this is slicing, right? Let's move on to how to find the length, or how do we find the number of elements inside a list, right? So as I mentioned just now, we have a function. We have a function called len, okay, which basically returns the length of any variable that we want. So in this case, we can use the same function, say print the length of a list. Let's try with y. Okay, see how many elements are there inside. So we have 9 elements. Let's try counting it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. 9 elements, right? So for us to find how many elements are there in a list, so we can also use the len function and just pass in the list. Right. Same goes if I try and find the len of z. Okay, it will return 2 because there are only 2 floating points number here. Right. Same goes for x. We have 5 elements. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Right. So we use len to find the length. Right. So let's say we have an array, okay, and we have a list here. Okay, let's take z for example, this list. I want to add a new number at the end of the list. Right, I want to add a new number at the end of the list. So what I can do is I can write z dot append. Append. Okay, append is basically taking whatever value that you provide in the parentheses, and it will put it at the end of the list. Right, so in this case, z we have 1.4 and 2.3. Now let's add a new floating point. Let's say 10.3. Okay. So when we have appended it, so we'll print out the new Z, which is going to have a new element here. Let's try thinking before and after. So before is 2 elements. After we have appended, then it has new elements because we just appended a new one here, right? Same goes if you want to. You can also pop. Okay, pop basically means you remove the last element, right? So we can pop and we can print again. So firstly, the Z is here, right? 1.4, 2.3, and then we append 10.23 inside, right? Which is here, and then we pop. Pop is we remove the last element. The last element currently in the Z array, Z list is 10.23. So it removes 10.23. If let's say you want to pop 2 items, so we just have to call the pop one more time. So instead of having 2 elements, now it's just 1 element. So that's append and pop. And next up we have, oh yeah, before I move on, do anyone have any problem? Any question you guys want to ask?
Could you repeat about the pop? Pop is to remove the last element, right?
Yep.
So how come that you got only 1.4?
Yeah, because I remove the element twice.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I call pop twice here. I remove this line, right? So I will still have 2 elements because I just remove the last element only and remove 1 element once.
Is it possible if we write pop inside got bracket element number 2, element number 2?
If you want to remove a specific item, then there's other functions for it.
Okay.
But it's definitely not pop. So let's say you want to remove okay, so now we have 10.23 in our array. So if you want to remove a specific element, so let's say you want to remove 2.3, then we have the dot remove function. Yeah, we have the dot remove function where it takes in the value of whatever you want to remove. In this case, let's say you want to remove 1.4, and you just put 1.4, and then we place that back. As you can see, 1.4 is being removed. Right, and also other than append, pop, and remove, okay, we also have we also can modify the value inside the list, since a list is mutable, right? So let's say for array for list A, okay, which stores the Boolean value true and false, right? So let's say I want to change the first element from true to false. So how can I do that is, so remember back that this thing is index 0 and this thing is index 1. Right? So we call the first element by using a and then square bracket, the name of list and then square bracket, and put the index, right? So this thing is referring to true, which is the first element in the list, and we can straight away assign it to another variable another value that we want. So a0 equals to false, since we want to change it. Just imagine, right? So we can print the before and we can print the after, right? So in the beginning, so it is true and false, and after we have changed the first element to false, and now the list become false and false. And practically, since Python does not like care whatever value you put in an array, you can put in string also. You can change it to whatever you want. So the point here is that when you have after you have defined an array, after you have defined a list, their value can be changed later down in the code, right? It doesn't mean that once you have defined something, then you permanently cannot change. Yeah. So that's the mutation part, the mutable part. Here's a append, pop, and remove. Here's finding the length, here's a slice, right? And yeah, one more thing I want to emphasize on is, okay, notice that we have an array in we have a list in a list. Okay, we have nested list, right? So let me bring that down. Let me bring that down to where we want to use it, right? Right. So now we are focusing on just this list, right? So this list is basically containing a nested list. So the elements is also the same. So before the comma, since I mentioned just now, the comma is the thing that separates each of the elements. So if you can visualize it, so the first list is our zero index that have the zero index, and the second list is having the first index, one index, sorry, 0 and 1, right? So what happens if we try to print B at index 0? So it will print out whatever inside, whatever that is belonging to index 0. Okay, so in this case, whatever the thing that is in the 0th index is the another list that have the value of 1 and 2. Okay, and same thing if you just copy this thing, right? Yeah, if I print out B at index 1, then it will print out the second element. Okay, so each of the lists inside the list are being treated as an individual elements, right? But sometimes you might want to like access some of the values inside the list that is nested inside another bigger list, right? So how can we do that, right? So let's just take the first element, for example. I want to focus on just this element, the 1 comma 2. So if we print, okay, wait, let me change. Okay, print. Now it's 1 comma 2, right? How do we print out just the 1 inside here? All right, so just now we know that the 1 comma 2 is belonging to the 0th index, right? So we need another indexing because inside the list there is another list. So now if we call B0, so it will return 1 comma 2. Okay, so in 1 comma 2 itself, it has its own index. So number 1 belongs to index 0, number 2 belongs to index 1, right? So it's basically nested like this. Let me remove this. Yeah, so we have B0, B at index 0 returns 1 comma 2, and let's put another comment here, right? And B0, and we put another square bracket 0. Okay, this one returns the value of 1. Okay, B0, 1 returns the element of 2. Right, so this is how you're going to refer to nested loops. So basically we have the bigger array first, and then this sorry, not bigger array. We have the bigger list first, and then the smaller list comes second. The index, I mean. So let's say I want to print the value of I want to print the 2 here. So 2 here is in B0. Okay, we have B0 since it is the first location in the first in the bigger list, right? And then we can move on to the smaller index and smaller list, right? So 2 is at the second position. So second position is index 1, right? So when we print that, we get just 2. Right, same goes for if let's say I want to print number 4. So number 4 is the bigger list, the index is 1. Okay, just put 1. And then in the smaller list, the index is also 1. Right, so B11 will print out number 4. So let's say I have say I have another array of lists A, B, C, is E, then E. Right. So I have a new list. So the first element is a list that contains 3 elements. Okay, and at the second element, we have another list that contains 2 elements only. So let's try printing that out. So print x0 and print x1. So we can see x0 returns ABC and x1 returns DE. Okay. So let's say I want to print out the letter A. So what should I do? So firstly, I need to refer to the larger index first, and the larger list first, the outside list. So the outside list, the index is 0. Then I go inside the smaller list, right? So inside the smaller list, you can see that A is index 0, B is index 1, C is index 2. Okay. And in the second element, D is index 0, E is index 1. Okay, so let's say I want to print out the character A. So I need to print x0, 0. So 0, 0. Let's say I need to print out the character B. Right, print x0. Okay, let's see B. B is 0 and 1. I put 0, 1. So print out B. And lastly, I want to print out C is 0, 2. So ABC. Right? So this is how you can access to each of the values inside a nested list, right? Or if you don't want to call it a nested list, then you can call it as a two-dimensional array, two-dimensional list, 2D list, right? So yeah, that's all about lists, right? That's just list. So do anyone have any problem that you guys want to ask or anything? You can just drop your question in the chat and I'll try to answer it. Oh yeah, commenting codes, right? So in Python, I totally forgot about this. In Python, for you to comment a code is to use the hashtag sign. The hashtag sign, okay? The hashtag symbol. Okay. Yeah. Or if you're using VS Code, then you can press whatever Siddharth type in the chat. Control plus /. If Mac, then command plus /. Yeah. So and in VS Code, let's say I want to highlight these 3 lines. So instead of going to each line and press control /, then press up control /, press up control /. So what you can do is you can highlight. You can highlight whatever lines that you want to how many lines that you want to highlight. Once you highlight them all, then you can just press the shortcut and it will highlight it for you. Highlight the whole thing. So it's much more easier rather than have to go one by one to comment it out. Yeah. Any other questions? Is everyone okay? All right. Okay for now, right? Okay, yeah. Right, good. Right, so okay, cool. So the next one, the next data structure that we're going to look on is we have we have 3 more, right? So tuples, sets, and dictionary for data structures, right? So tuples is basically when you store something, and also before that, tuples can contain duplicates, can be ordered, and also values in tuple are not immutable. Values in tuples are immutable. So that means once you have defined something in a tuple, then you cannot change their values anymore. It will just return you an error. Okay, so how can we assign a tuple? So let's create a tuple. Say tuple 1. Okay, tuple 1 equals to, instead of writing it by a square bracket or anything, we just put it inside a parenthesis. Right. So let's say I want a tuple of integer, so I can just write 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah. So it's basically the same thing with list. Every element is separated by a comma, but then it is enclosed by a parenthesis instead of a square bracket. Right? And also tuple um can also store strings. Let's say I'm Daniel. Okay. Tuple can also store Boolean values like true false. Okay. And tuples can also store tuples inside them, like nested tuples. So we have tuples of tuples. So 1, 2, then 10, 12. So this one is tuple of tuples. Yeah, this is a nested tuples, just the same thing that we have with the array. Where is it? No, yeah, here. List, sorry, not array. Okay, yeah, list. Right. So how do we access each element? It's basically the same. We use the square bracket this time. So let's say I want to print tuple 1. Okay. Print tuple 1. But I want to print, okay, let's change it up a bit. Let's put 10, 21, this random number, this random number. Right. Okay, so let's say I want to print the element number 3. Okay, so element number 3, the index is 2. So how do I access it? Put a square bracket and put in 2, the index value. So if I print this out, it will print out 1, 2, 3, 4 as expected. Right. Same goes for tuples of tuples. So if you cannot visualize it, then you have to do something like this. So first we go on the bigger tuple first. So we have 2 elements. So elements 1 and element 2. Okay, the first element is not element 1 and element 2. Yeah, correct. The index are zeros and 0 and 1, right? So the first element is another tuple that have values of 1 and 2. The second one is 10 and 12, right? So once we have the index of the larger tuple, then we go on inside the smaller tuple. So the smaller tuple have value of this index of 0 and 1. Same goes for this one, 0 and 1. Okay. So let's say I want to print out the value of, let's say I want to print out 10. So how do I print 10? How do I get 10? It's by tuple 4, 1, and 0. So I just write tuple 4, 1, bracket 1, and bracket 0. So it will print out 10. Okay. So I mentioned something about immutable, right? Let's say I want to modify the value of tuple 2. I want to say instead of I'm Daniel, let's change this to John. Instead of I'm Daniel, so it will become I'm John, right? So how do we do that? In list, you can just say something like tuple 2, and then we get the index of it. What's the index of Daniel? Index of Daniel is 1. So tuple 2, 1, okay, equals to John, right? So if I actually run this, it will give me an error saying that the tuple object does not support item assignment. This is because everything that is stored inside a tuple is immutable. All right. And also, yeah, I also forgot to show you that tuple can have duplicate value, right? Right. So let's say I have I'm Daniel, right? So let's just print out print tuple 2. Yeah, there's no error, right? I got an error. Could not find renderer. You might want to join the another Google Meet link. The is yeah, or you can use Discord. Yeah. And so list is better than tuple. Yeah, it depends on your use case. Yeah. It is there for us to use, so it totally depends on your use case. So yeah, this is just tuple. So most of the things in tuples are basically the same with list, but it is everything in tuple is immutable, but everything in list is mutable, right? So you can change it, right? So next one is set. So in set, the only the difference is it is, can you show the inevitable inevitable, or you mean the immutable part, is it? Immutable part, right? So for tuple, so let's say I want to change the value of I want to change my name, right? So my name is Daniel here, right? So this is, firstly we get the element first. So this one is element 0, element 1, element 2, right? So in list, if you want to change the value, so we can just take the name of the list, or in this case it is tuple, then call it by the index. So here I want to change index 2, then I just change it to, let's put another name, it's the J this time, okay. So tuple 2 at the element 2, index 2, not element 2, sorry, index 2 is equals to J, right? So when you run this, it will display an error, right? So this error is actually expected, since we know that tuple is immutable, so we cannot change the value once we have defined it. Yeah, all right. Okay, so tuples, that's tuple. Right, now let's move on to set. Okay, so set is unordered. Okay, so unordered, that means you cannot call them by the well, yeah, okay, okay. So where was I just now? Okay, in set, yeah. So in set, so it is, firstly it is unordered, so we cannot call it by index like what we do previously, like here. Let's say I want to call the first element, so I can just call the element by their index, right? But you cannot do that in set, and also the values are immutable, and also everything that is stored in set cannot be duplicate. It can be duplicate, but when you print it out, um, the value are not duplicated. It will just remove the duplicate value, right? So how do we define a set? Okay, how do we create a set? So let's write our variable name, set1, okay, equals to, right? So for list, we are using square brackets. For tuple, we are using parentheses. In set, we are using curly braces. Yeah, we are using curly braces, right? So whatever that we want to store inside the set should be enclosed with the curly braces, but each of the elements are still separated by the commas. So let's say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? Now let's try printing the set, right? So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. Let's create. Let's show that you cannot actually print. Let's say you cannot actually call it by index. Let's say I want to call the. Let's change the number up a bit. 23, 4, 5, 10, 120, 85. All right. So let's say I want to call index number. I want to call the element, the how many element? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I want to call the fifth element. So fifth element has the index of 4. I want to call set1 bracket 4. If I run this, then yeah, it will return an error saying that it is not subscriptable. So every time that you see it's not subscriptable, it's either that you are not, so that means the elements inside your variable, inside your set1, cannot be called by their index. So this shows that set is unordered, right? So let's see the immutable part. So let's create another set2 of hi everyone. Right. So let's print set2. Right. So if we print, it will just print fine. Okay. So let's say I want to change the first element of the set2. Instead of hi, I want it to write hello. Right. So if it's in list, then I can just do something like this: set2 0 equals to, right. Then when I run this, then it will print out the same error as tuple because it does not support item assignment. That means it is immutable. So everything that you have put inside a set is immutable. You cannot change it. Right. So and also same goes for set and tuple. So let's say you want to find the number of element in a set and also in the tuple. So you can do something like print length of set one. So this will give you the number of elements inside the set. So in set one, we have 6 elements. So the length of the set is 6. So in set 2, we are expecting a value of 2. So yeah, 2. Same goes for tuple. Say I will print the length of tuple 1. It will print out 4. Right. Okay, the length out of the way. Now let's see what happens if we put duplicates value. Right. So we have a set. So hi. Instead of hi everyone, I have hi everyone. Everyone. Right. Okay. So when we define it, it does not give any error. There's no error with defining a set like this. But when you print it out, then you will see the difference. So let's print out set 3. Instead of printing hi 2 times, you just print it as 1 time. Because in a set, the set cannot contain any duplicate values. Yeah. So this might be useful in some algorithms. I don't want to get into what algorithm can use set, but yeah, most of the algorithm that let's say sorting or counting stuff, most of them are being implemented with set, right? So yeah, so this is the one of the use cases, right? So set, tuple, and list. Anyone have any problem before we move on to the final data structure, which is a dictionary? Any problem? Any question? Ask. You can just drop in the chat. Are you guys still? Are you guys still hanging on? All right, good, nice. Right, so far okay. Right, nice. So set is the same as tuple. No, set is not the same as tuple. So as you can see in the wait, let me change this one. Set. Right. So as you can see, set and tuple. So set can contain duplicates. So that means if you have 2 elements that have the same value, then when you print it out, it will print out both of the duplicates value. And tuples can be called by their indexes, right? But set the main difference of set and tuple is set is unordered. So that means you cannot call the elements by their indexes, and set cannot contain duplicates value. Yeah, so it's not the same. And also the way you instantiate, the way you define your variables is also not the same. Tuple is using parentheses, the normal bracket, and set is using curly braces. Yeah, using curly braces. Okay, so okay, everything good? Everything clear? Right, so now we can finally move on to dictionary. All right. So if you guys have heard of something called key value pairs, then this might make some sense to you. But for those who haven't, then never mind. So a key value pairs is basically a pair of data, right, that has the key and a value, right? So the value here is the value belongs to the key. So instead of assigning it, let's say in a list, right, we want to call it, we call it by their element, their index number, right? But in the key value pair, when we want to print out the value, we search the value, not search, we call the value by their key. So in this case, their key is sort of their index, a way to refer the value, right? So that is key value pair, right? But and dictionary in Python uses this format to store their values. Okay, so how do we create dictionary? So let's name it dictionary. Okay, equals to dictionary in Python uses curly braces as well. It's similar to set, but then set does not have key value pairs, right? It is using curly braces, but dictionary is using key value pairs, right? So how do we write the key value pairs? Is like this, okay? So the syntax is first come your key, right? And then there is a colon, and then comes your value. So this is how we define a dictionary in Python, right? So key first, colon, and then value, right? So let's say if I want to have multiple keys, so instead of just one key, how do I add another key is when you have, let's say in this case I have only one key. For me to add another key, I need to put a comma separating it, comma. Then proceed on writing the same thing, key 2 or whatever the key you want to call, then colon, and then their values, right? So let's try printing this out first. Let's try print dictionary. Okay. So you can see it is printed in a format like this, right? So key one have the value of value. Okay, okay. It's a bit confusing. Let's change this to my name. Here is uh right. Let's print this out. So key 1 has the value of Daniel, key 2 has the value of 1, 2, 3, 4. Right? Okay, let's change that. Not Daniel, a bit boring. Okay, John, right? So key 1 is John, key 2 is 1, 2, 3, 4. Right? So this key need to be something meaningful, usually, because when we store something in the dictionary, so that means we want to like have a proper record of it. So this John is, let's say, his name, then 1, 2, 3, 4 is, let's say, their ID, right? So when we store something like this in a dictionary as a key value pair, so that it is clear, the name is John, then the ID of John is 1, 2, 3, 4. So this is basically like a record, right? So and also the value it does not have to be a string, right? So this one can be just number, right? And let's say I have had another status called married. Okay, so this one can also store boolean. So let's say John is married. Okay, so married true. Then what else? Okay, type in meters. Okay, let's say 1.75, right? So if I print this out, so it will print out the whole thing. So the name is John, ID is 1, 2, 3, 4, married is true, height in meter is 1.75. Right. So let's say that you want to view all the keys in the dictionaries. Okay, so there are some helper functions. Okay, use some utility functions that you can use. So the first one is let's print dictionary dot keys, and then the bracket parentheses open and close, right? So if you just print this, then it will return to you the keys of the dictionary. So basically everything that is on the left hand side, right? So name, ID, married, and height, right? So if we print out another one, which is not related, print dictionary dot values, right? We print the values, then instead of printing the keys, it will print out the values, which is on the right hand side. Everything that is on the right hand side. So John 1, 2, 3, 4, true, and 1.75. Right. So until now, is everything clear? Good.
Could you repeat again about the key and value?
Which part that you're not clear? Is it everything, the key and value pair?
Yeah.
Okay, so basically a key or value pair is just a means of storing data. Okay, let's say just now in our list, right? Every time we want to refer to a value, let's say I want to refer to this high, I can refer to it by using y square bracket 0, right? Since it is the first element, so that's why the element is 0. Okay, But in dictionary, how do we refer to their values? Is we refer to the we call the keys instead of straight away find the value. Right. So let me just show an example. Right. So I want to print the name. Oh, I only want to print the name. Okay. But instead of calling it by their index, which is 0, 1, 2, 3, 4 or something, those things does not exist for dictionary. But for us to retrieve the value, we just print out the key. Okay, use the key as their index. So you just put something like this. So we go dictionary, square bracket, and then put the key inside. Okay, and then we print it out. So in this case, we are printing John. Okay, the result is John. But how does Python know where to get this John from? It's from the name key. So basically, Python will go inside dictionary, search for key name, right? Retrieve their value, which is John, and then return to us. That's how key value pairs works. Okay, so let's say let's try printing ID. The ID is 1, 2, 3, 4. Why are we storing them? It depends on the use case. For now, I'm just saying that I'm just showing this as an example. But let's say you have a real use case where okay, let me just create another. Okay, let's now create a dictionary of person. Okay, let's say person 1, not person 1. Okay, student 1. Okay, student 1. Of course, the student have a name, right? So let's say we put what, correct? And a student has age also. We need to keep track of their age. Let's say in this case, right, the age is let's say 21, right? Okay, then the student major, right? So in this case, software engineering, right? So I just put SE. So this is imagine that this is the only the only information about students that we require to, let's say, use in some record system or something, right? So let's do another one for student 2. You know what? I can just copy this thing, right? And change it to student 2, right? Then student 2 name instead of what it is Hakim. Age is the same. Major is not the same. Hakim is taking AI, right? This is an example, right? So now if you print out these two, you can see it served as some kind of a record instead of just storing it. Like it's a detailed record. So we can see the student 1, the name is Watik, age is 21, major is software engineering. So student 2, Hakim, age 21, major is AI. Yeah, so this is why there are certain use cases that we want to store something in a dictionary compared to like an array or something. Let's say you are storing, let's imagine you are creating a game, right? In a game where you want to keep track of all the data, so we are storing all the data in the game log. So in the game log, there should be like multiple things to store. It should be the player username, then their game time, and their lives, how many times they have died, what levels are they on, what money, how many money that they have gotten, right? So all those kind of stuff are more suitable to be stored in dictionary, okay, so that we can call them easily instead of just having to search through it by indexes like this and also like this. Yeah, so that's how that's why we store something in a dictionary. Right, and also in a dictionary, okay, everything in dictionary is changeable, right? It's mutable basically, not changeable, right? It's mutable. So let's say I want to change the name of student 2 to instead of Hakim, I want to change it to my name, right? So what can I do? Same goes with a list. Take the name of dictionary, put a square bracket, okay? But in list, the way we modify our element is by calling the index. But now in dictionary, we are not using index, we are using keys. So the key that I want to modify is name. So I just write name, right? And then I just straight away change it. Instead of Hakim, change it to Daniel. Right? So now you can see the result. We print out student 2. Okay, so instead of Hakim, initially I define it as Hakim. Then this line I've changed it to my name. So when I print it out, so the result will be like this. Right. And other than that, let's just change the age. Student 2, age is 22. Right. Yeah. Instead of this student 2 belonging to Hakim, now it is storing my name and my age and my major. Right. So this is one of the example that we can change that. And also, let's say I want to add hobbies. Okay, for example, we somehow want to store hobbies instead of student 2. Okay, student 1 don't have hobby. So we need to store hobbies on student 2 only. In this case, let's say this for example, right? So what can we do? Student 2, right? You notice that in our declaration we don't have any key name as hobby, right? So for us to in Python, the way we add that is by directly defining a new one, a new key, right? So student 2, square bracket, and then inside we put the new key that we want to store. Inside. Then we just define it, and we just give it some value. My hobby is let's say right. So in the beginning, I don't have any keys of hobby. And now let's see what happens if I print it out. Right. So when I print it out, I have name, age, major, and a new key called hobby. So that's how we add a new key lah. If let's say we want to add it for a certain dictionary only. Yeah. And also we can, there's another utility function in, there's two more actually. So just now I showed you the keys. So in here we have dictionary dot keys. Okay, dictionary dot keys basically print all the keys. Dictionary dot values, print the values instead of the keys. And one more thing is we have dictionary dot items, right? So let me comment these two lines out. Okay, so when we are printing dictionary dot items, so it is actually going to print out the key value pairs, right, in a tuple, right? It's not the same as, it's not in the same format as something like this. Okay, the top one, the top line, the top output is dictionary dot items, and the bottom one is just the plain old dictionary, right? So dictionary dot items actually return your key value pair in a tuple, right? So we have gone through tuple before, so this one should be nothing new. So this one, every time you see a pair that is inside parentheses, a normal bracket, so that one is a tuple, right? So this one is a tuple. So keys return the keys, value return the value, and items return the key value pair inside a tuple, right? And lastly, we have another helper function, which is hop. Let's say you want to remove a key from a dictionary. Let's say I want to remove students one's age, right? So how do I do that? So I can just call student one dot pop. Student one dot pop. I put a bracket, right? So what do I want to pop? I want to pop the age. I want to remove the age. So I just define age. Oh, now if I print out student one, that's no age. Okay, this is not the same as the pop in list where it just remove the last item, but in dictionary, when you pop, you have to specify the key so that it knows what to pop, right? What to remove. So this is how you remove a key. This one is how you add a key. This one is how you change a value for a key given, right? So that's dictionary, right? Until now, anyone have any problems?
Daniel, can you explain when we have to use equal and also double dot?
Okay, yeah, sure. So colon, okay, the double dot is colon, right? Colon is used for key value pairs, right? Colon is used for key value pairs. Okay, so basically in Python, okay, until now, all from top to dictionary, from the moment we start until dictionary, there's only two places where we use colon. One is in dictionary, okay, which is here, and another one is when we are slicing arrays, when we are slicing lists, right? In this case, yeah, those are the two places where we are using colon. Okay. Other than that, when we are like, let's say we are assigning something, in this case, we are assigning this string to this key. So we are using the equal sign.
So only in dictionary and also slicing.
Yes.
Okay.
Right. Okay. Any other questions?
So in dictionary, there's 4 things, right? Key, value, items, and pop.
There's a lot more actually, but those four are the one that I've shown. Key, values, item, and pop. Yes.
Would you mind show me the item one? I didn't catch it.
The items one. Okay.
Yeah.
Sure. So the item one is here. Dictionary dot items.
Oh, okay.
Yep. No problem. Any other questions? Anything that you're not clear? Right. So we have a lot more to go, but I really hope we can finish it like before 1, or else it will disturb the second session, right? So yeah, I'm going to move on to conditional statement, and after all this one should be a bit easy, a bit fast to catch up. So yeah, let's begin. So in conditional statement is basically just if else statement. So for those who have learned C or C++ or Java, so you might know this, right? Not you might, you have to know this, right? Because it's just a simple if else. So let's say I have two numbers, A equals to 10, B equals to like 20, right? So let's create a condition. I want to print um, A is bigger than I want to print a string called A is bigger than B, right? So, but uh, or A less than B or A equal than B. Okay, it depends on the number that I provided here. So in this case, we know that A is definitely smaller than B. So let's write some condition statement for it. So firstly, we can write, how do we write condition statements in Python is, let's create our first condition. Our first condition going to be if A more than B, right? Notice that there's no parentheses here. There's no need of a parenthesis if you have only one condition and you don't want to like confuse yourself, then yeah, there's no need to use parentheses. And also in other languages like in C or C++ or Java, right? So you have something like this, right? So if A more than B, then you open the curly braces, then let's say you print something here, right? But in Python, there's no curly braces in if else statement. So we just directly, if A more than B, then we use colon, right? This is another usage of colon. So if A more than B, then colon, right? Then print um, A, A greater than B, right? So if there's an if, then normally we have an else and also some else if, right? For us to evaluate multiple condition. So let's see how do we write an else. So an else is pretty much direct, else, and then colon. And print A is then B, right? So in this case, it will print out A is less than B because A is 10, B is 20. So let's change this to say 40. Then it will print out A greater than B. Okay. let's see if what happens if I put A 2020 A and B have both the same value. So in this case, it will print out A is less than B because the first condition is false. Okay, 20 is not greater than 20. So how do we check for another condition? So in this case, we have to use else if. So in other languages, you will write just else if, but in Python, it is shortened to ELIF, alif. Okay, alif. And right after the alif, then we just put whatever condition. In this case, I want to check if whether A is equals to B, right? So we just write print A is equal to B. Okay, nice. So in this case, A is equal to B because both of them having the same values. Okay, keep note of the number of equal sign being used here. If you are assigning something, in this case, we are assigning values to a variable, okay, then we use only single equal sign, right? When we are comparing something, whether the left-hand side is equal to the right-hand side, then we use double equal, right? There's plenty more operators in if else. So one of them is more than equals. Okay, so firstly we have more than, we have less than, we have equals, and we have not equal, and we have more than equals, we have less than equal. And also other than that, we have a logical operator also. We have the logical and. It's just n as an English letter n. It's all small letter n. And we also have logical or, which is this one, just or. And we have the logical not also, which is just not. Yeah, so these three logical operators are in English. So it's a bit easy to remember. So let's say, let's create another if else statement. Let's say A is true, B is true. So I want to check whether A and B are true, right? So if A and B, so that means if A and B are both true, so that means print something. So I want to print A and B both true, right? Then we have an else and say either one is false. Okay, so why do I say this? It's because in the logical end, we have two inputs, right? X, Y, and X and Y, right? So if X is true, Y is true, then the result of X and Y, true and true, returns true. Where true returns true. Then if one of these is false, so let's say X is false, Y is true, then this will return false. Then same goes if T and true and false for X and Y, this one will return false also. And if both of them are false, then it will also return false. So that's why I'm having an else statement here saying that either one is false. So technically correct. Either one of them are false, right? So so in this case, A and B are both true, right? So let's change this one to false. So it will change that. It will print that either one is false, right? So we can not only do that, we can also use or, right? So that means if in or either one of them is true, then it is considered true. So it'll be both true. Then okay, let's just print this first, right? A or B. Okay, let's change this print message. Either A or B is true. Right. So how do we get false in or? So the only time where it is false is when both of them are false. Right. So that means in else both A and B are false. Right. So in this case, A and B are false. So A or B will return false. So that means it goes to the else. Right. So this is just showing the logical, and also last one we have the not. The not is just a negation. So let's say we have input x and the output of not x, right? Right. So let's say the input is true, so the output of not true is false. So we have input false, the output of not false is true. Okay, so the same thing. If b, so in this case, okay, let's use a equal to 2. Right. Then in a is true. A is false. Right. So in this case, I want to check whether a is true or not. So I can just write if a. So that means if a is true, so print a is true. Yeah, obviously we know if a is true because here, right? So let's say I want to print um if a is false, right? Let's change a is false. Okay, so it will print a is false. Right. So one way, if a is false, but then we still want to print this, so how do we do that? So we can just basically negate the a. So basically flip the state of the false to become true. How do we do that? Is by by putting a not in front of the variable. So if not a, so that means if, yeah, basically means if the a is flipped other way around. Right. So in this case, a here is false, but then in the condition is if not a. So not false is true. So it goes in this statement. So that's why it's printing a is true. Okay, let's see what happens if we put a is true here. So a is true. Then if not a is not true is false. So that's why it prints out a is false. Okay, got it? Any questions? Just want to ask. Any ambiguity?
Can say about the true again. I still confusing at the true equal b, that one.
Where
Yeah,
is
this
it?
one. This one. If a is more than b, that one.
Okay, so yeah, this is our first condition to check whether A is more than B or not. So if A is more than B, so we print this number, and we print this sentence, A greater than B. Okay, you know what? To make it less confusing, let's just print right here. Okay, then here second one is okay. The last one is nothing. Right. So if A is bigger than B, then we print Daniel. If A is equals to B, that means they have the same value, then we print Hakim. Otherwise, if none of these two conditions are being satisfied, then print this. Okay, so in this case, we have A is 20, B is 20. So in this case, it will go through from the top. So if A more than B, is A more than B? No, right? Because 20 is equals to 20. So it will skip this line. It will skip the first if. Then it will go on check to the second one. The second one is an else if. So it will check the condition. So is A equals to B? Yes, A is equals to B. So 20 is equals to 20. Then it will print out Hakim. So if I run this, it will print out Hakim. Right? And
Understand for this one.
yeah, okay, nice. So just to show, let's say like 40. So you print out my name because 40 is more than 20. And let's say I put it's 1. So you print out 1 thing because 1 is less than 20. And we don't check for any less condition here. We don't have any checking for A less than B. So that's why it will skip. It will skip and go to the else part, right? Okay, one last thing about if is I'm not sure whether you guys know this or not. But in certain languages there are some shorthand method of writing if else statement, right? So it's called a ternary operator in some languages. So we have the same thing in Python, but it's not exactly ternary operator, but then it's sort of something like that. It's a like more simplified way of writing if else. Okay, so let's say we have we have A and B also. So A is 1, B, make it up challenging. Num1 is say 100, num2 is 85, right? So technically I can write something like this. If num1 more than num2, then print when num1 is bigger, else num1 is smaller, right? So technically I can write something like this, but this takes like how many lines? 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 lines of code, right? And sometimes it's really just a matter of like whether we see the what do you call it? Whether the code is formatted nice or not. But this thing, instead of writing 4 lines of code, we can condense it to be 1 line, right? So how do we do that? So first we put the condition that we want. Okay, let me not delete that. Okay, so this one is condition if true. Okay, the second one is condition if false. Right, so we have 2 conditions in this case. So if true, then it will enter the first one. If false, then it will enter the second condition. Okay. So in the shorthand method, in the short form way to write else if else statement, so we can write like this. First, we write the condition, the true condition first, which is this one. So we can write print num1 is bigger. Okay. Then we write the condition that we want. Okay, here. If num1 more than num2. So print num1 is bigger if num1 more than num2, right? Then don't need to forget don't forget the else part. Okay, don't forget the else. So if print num1 is bigger if num1 is bigger than num2, else then we have the second condition, which is this one. Condition is if false. So print num1 is smaller. So this is how you write a single line if else statement. Okay, but I don't suggest this method of writing if else unless you know what you are doing. Okay, it's basically doing the same thing, but looks much more neat. Okay, so in this case it will just print out the same thing. Num1 is bigger because this one is 100. Let's change it to 10. Right, so num1 is smaller. So why does Python have this is basically readability part. Not readability, yeah. So for the developer to understand it's like beginner friendly. So what does this statement actually what does this statement actually talking about is print this sentence if num1 is bigger than num2, otherwise print this one. Yeah, so it's a bit self-explanatory, but then if you're not sure what you are doing or you are getting lost during writing a code, then please avoid this method of writing. Then just go back to the traditional if else. There's no difference between the previous and the current one. Will the statement be the same if we have elif inside that if else? You mean for the short form method? Okay, for the short form method, basically you can chain up multiple if else for you to achieve elif. Yeah, that's the part where you be a bit confused because you have if. Okay, wait, let me write it down. It should be something like this. Okay, so let's say if A, then we have do something. Okay, then else, then do another thing. Do another thing. Okay, this is not actual Python code, but then I'm just writing it here. Okay, so if in else if, so what do we do? So if A, then do something, then else if B, then do another thing, then finally we have the else. Right, so basically to this thing. Right, so in this, else if is just a nested if inside the bigger if. Okay, so basically else if is just saying that if not the previous condition, then check for this condition. So basically, you are going to have a nested if else inside the current if else. So it will be condensed into one line, but this single line will be longer. So if you have else if, then I suggest you to go for the normal one, since it is much more readable. But if your if else statement is like short, and let's say you just want to print num1 if num1 is bigger than num2, otherwise print num2, then yeah, for those kind of simple if else statement, then you can, yeah, it is advisable to go for this. But otherwise, then yeah, just go for the normal if else. There's no performance difference also, just the way your code looks. That's all. We'll run this back, so number is smaller, right? Okay, no problem. Right, so for conditional statement, no problem, right? All good. So now it's 12:34, right? So we have for loops, while loops, functions. Whew, okay, let's go. So next we are going for loops. Okay, so loops is basically how you want to do something repeatedly. Okay, so let's say I want to print hello world 10 times. Okay, so there are two methods of achieving this. One method is okay, I paste it 10 times, right? So your code will look something like this, or you can use a for loop. Like we can use looping to run the same code multiple times without needing to copy paste, right? So how do we write for loop in Python is for I in range. Okay, let me just write the code down first, and then I'll explain it. Right. Okay, so what does this code mean? So for I in range 10. So range 10 is basically a data type that stores range from 0 to 10. Okay, since we doesn't specify any starting number. So it will start from 0 until 10, but then the 10 is not included. Okay, so you get what I mean? So it's just printing, it's just counting from 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. So in total, there are 10 numbers, but it counts from 0, okay, because we didn't state any starting number to count on. So yeah, it will count until 0. So it will count until 10 from 0. Okay. So in this case, if I run this, it will print out hello world 10 times as expected. Right. So let's say I want to loop this for 10 is exclusive, in other words. Okay, since range, if you don't specify any starting number, it will by default start from 0. By default, it will start to count from 0. Okay, but then the value here is not inclusive. Okay, so another way to show you this is I itself. Yeah, so if we write it in a mathematical term, it will be square bracket 0 until the range. But the range is in the normal parentheses. Yeah. Yeah, just like Cornelius said, right? So yeah, here I have printed the I, so it will start from 0 and then ends at 9. Okay, another way to look at this is range 10. So start from 0, count to 10 from it. So 0, 1, 2, 3. So you have 10 elements in total. Yeah, if you want to include 10, do range 11. Yep, exactly. So from 0 to 10, then there's in total 11 elements here. Yeah, because it starts from 0. Okay, let's say I want to count from 1 instead of 0. So instead of just range and then put the whatever number I want it to stop counting, I have to add a starting number. So let's say I want to start to count from 1. Okay, so I just add 1 and then put a comma. All right, so in this case, if I print out I, it will print out starting from 1 until 10 because 11 is not included. Okay, that's range. And oh yeah, one more thing about range is let's say we have for I in range 1 to 11. Okay, let's say, oops. Okay, let's say instead of printing all the numbers, I want it to increment by 2 for each iteration. Right. So by default the iteration is only increasing by 1, so the I will be increasing by 1. So if you want to change it to other numbers, we can just specify the step at the end of the range. So in this case, we start from 1, ends at 10, but with an increment of 2 instead of just 1. Right? So if you run this code, you will see 1, 3, 5, 7, 9. Okay. 1 plus 2 is 3, 3 plus 2 is 5. This goes on, right? And also, let's say in some cases you want to count backwards. So you want to count from 10. You want to count from 10 to 0, 10 to 1. Okay. So the step will be -1 because we will be minusing 1 every iteration. So 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Right? So to recap, the first, if you don't specify anything, so let's say for I in range 10, if you don't specify, if you just specify how many times you want to loop, okay, just that, then just a single number, this thing is representing how many times. But if you have two numbers, then this is the start value and this is how many times. And if you have three values, then this one is, okay, wait, let's change it. 1, 11, and 2. Okay. So if you have three values in the range, then this one should be the start value. This one is the end value, but not inclusive. How many times you want to repeat, and this is the step. So for each iteration, how much of a number that we want to add to the previous I, right? So that's for loop. Okay. Another fun thing about for loops not a fun thing, it's a bit unique in Python is we have the let's say we have this for loop for I in range 10. Okay, then print I. All right. In Python, in for loop, we can add an else, right, at the end of for loop. Right? So this else will only be executed whenever the for loop has finished running. And so in this case, let's change it. Okay, so in this case, as you can see, it will print out 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. And then once it's finished with the loop, then it will print and loop, and the loop, or loop ended, or whatever. Yeah. Okay, loop ended. Yeah. So in Python, same goes for while loop. We can also use this else in a while loop. Same things. Whenever it has finished iterating, then it will go inside the else block, right? And also we have break in loop. So break is used to break out from the loop. So based on certain condition, let's say for I in range 10. Okay. Okay. So this one print from, okay, let's print from 1 to 10, right? So print I. Okay, so we have 1 to 10. Let's say I don't want to see the number 8 here. And if the current number is 8, then I don't want to stop. I want to stop printing anything else below 8. So I just want to see 1 to 7 only, right? So I can say something like if I equals to 8, right, then break, then I can continue printing I. Okay, so this basically means that it will iterate. So in this case, for I starting at 1, then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, when 7, the next iteration is 8. Okay, so the next iteration is 8. So I is equals to 8. Then it enters this if condition. This if condition satisfied with the current I, because I currently is 8. So it will break. So once it is break, then it won't continue printing because it will just straight away stop. Okay, the for loop will end there, right? And another thing is, instead of break, where we just stop the loop and we have continue. Okay, let's say same, oh no, we have the same loop. Okay, we have the same loop. But instead of break, I just don't want to see the number 8. Okay. So how do I do that? Is by using continue. So I run this code, you will see that it will print out until 10, but there's missing number 8. Right, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then skip number 8 and 9, 10. Yeah, so that's break and continue. And we can also use for loops. Okay, since remember just now we have learned list. Okay, so now is the time to use list.
Daniel, can you show back the continue?
The continue part. Yeah, here you go. Do you need some explanation, or just you want to see just the code?
Just want to see. Okay, got it.
All right. Okay, so now is it? Do you mind muting your microphone, Asa?
Sorry?
Do you mind muting your microphone?
Okay.
Because it's echoing. Yeah. All right. Thanks. Okay. So this now we have learned list. Okay. So now is the time for us to use list. Okay. So let's create an array called fruits. A list called fruits. Sorry. So we are storing apple, banana, cherry, other fruits are there, watermelon, durian, or durian, rambutan. All right. Okay, so we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, so we have 6 elements. So let me just put it here. 6 elements, right? So let's say I want to print out each individual elements in a list. So how do we do that? So we can use a for loop, right? There's the first one. Okay, let's say in here, right? We use this kind of for loop, right? The one that I've shown just now. For I in the range of, okay, how many elements? We have 6, right? But it starts from 0 until 5. So we have 6 elements there. So in range of 6, okay, then print. As usual, we want to access each element, but in this case, what are the index? So I itself is the number 0 to 5, but it happens to be that 0 to 5 is also our indexes. So apple is index 0, banana is 1, cherry 2, watermelon 3, durian 4, rambutan is 5. So we can use the I here as an index for our list. So if I change from I to fruits square bracket I, then I run this, then it will print out apple, banana, cherry, watermelon, durian, and rambutan, right? So what is happening here is basically the value of I is changing on every iteration. Okay, so that's why we can retrieve all of the values here. But in Python, for us to iterate a list, there's a much more neater way of doing, not neater, but a much more less confusing way of printing it using a for loop. So instead of using a for in and then range, so we have another loop. Let me format this out. We have another loop called just for in, for something in something, right? So the first thing here is in this case we can write for I also. It doesn't matter, but instead of range, is fruits. Okay, we substitute the range through fruits. So what does this mean? Is so for every I inside the list fruit. So in this case, the I is representing each of the element here. So let's print I. Okay, let's print I. So it's basically printing the same stuff, right? It's because I is in this case, I in a for loop is a iterator. Okay, so it iterates over every elements inside the list, no matter how many of them are there. So it will just iterate, and you see the different syntax is being used. If we are using for I in range, so in this case, the I is an integer of 0 to 5. But in this case, the I is not an integer, it's an iterator. Okay, so iterator is basically stuff that iterates through a container. So when we print that out, so it will just return whatever it is in the memory location at that in that container. So in this case, it is apple, banana, cherry, watermelon, durian, and rambutan. So that's why we can just print out I instead of just using fruits and I. If here we use fruits and I because we are calling it by index, here we are just calling each of the elements, right? So a lot of times when we are iterating through a container, most of the time we'll be using for I in something in Lisa. That's like pretty much all the time. Most of the time, basically, we don't use the range. We can just iterate through whatever it is in the list, right? So, and also we, instead of I, so we can say for fruit, singular fruit, inside plural fruits. So this one is our array name, list name, sorry. So we can print out singular fruit. So it's basically returning the same stuff. So that's a for loop for iterating through array, through list, right? Remember in the beginning that I said something like string is a character array. So let's bring that back. So A equals to, this is a string. Let's get a variable string, right? So an array of character is basically a list of character, right? And it's a known fact, we've established that fact just now. So since it is a container, we can also iterate string. Okay, so what does it mean by iterating a string? So we can say something like for letter in A, okay, print letter. Okay, so what does this for loop do is basically saying for each and every letter in the string A, print out the letter. So that's why you can see it's printing out each letter and then new line, each letter new line. And also there is the white space. Okay, the white space is also considered a character. And yeah, so this is like one method of showing string is a character array because you can iterate through it. Okay, and other than that, okay, yeah, it's 12:51. I think this is the last example before we have a break, or maybe we can have time for while loops. Okay, so let's say we have two arrays, two lists. One, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, for so long. 1, 2, 3, and one is say A, B, and C, right? So let's say you want to print each and every combination of the item, right? So let's say the expected output is 1A, 1A, 1B, 1C, and 2A, 2B, and then so on, so on and so forth until both of the elements have been finished iterating, right? So how do we do that? So same with lists and every other stuff in Python, we can have a for loop inside a for loop, right? So it's called nested for loops. Nested for loops, right? So how does nested for loop works is basically like this. Okay, so first we have for I in. So firstly we want to iterate through the list of that we want to iterate list X. Okay, so for I in X, right? So we can just try printing it out first. Okay, so it iterates correctly, 1, 2, 3. And let's change this to Y. Okay, let's print I also. It will print out ABC, right? All good. Okay, let's change it back to X. Okay, so for every item in X, we need it to pair with every item in Y. So that's why inside the for loop of X here, let's just label this the first. That's for okay. Inside the first for loop, okay, we need to have another for loop, okay, which is for J in Y. So this one is second for loop. Right. So what does this mean? So for every item in X, and let's say the item currently that we are iterating in X is 1. Okay, so it will iterate when the iterated when I is equals to 1, so J can be A, B, and C. Okay, so if I is 2, if I is 2, then J can also be A, B, C. So this is how we can find the combination of it. Right. So how do we do that? How can we actually visualize those? Is by just printing the value of I and J. Since we know I is 1, 2, 3, J is ABC. So we can print I, comma J. Right. So if you print this out, you print out our expected values, which is 1A, 1B, 1C, 2A, 2B, 2C, all this, until the end of the array. And also one benefit of using for each item in a list like this, instead of using range, is that let's say I've added more elements. Okay, so A, B, C, B. Right, I've added more elements. I don't have to change anything in the for loops because I'm iterating inside the array itself. So if I'm using the for in range, what is it? Yeah, here. If I'm using this, then it will just iterate through this number only. So I have to modify the for loop. Okay. So that's one of the benefits. So as you can see, just now I've added 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and ABCD. So it prints out all the combination, 1A to 1D, 2A to 2D, so on and so forth, 6A to 6D. Right. So next one, okay, is there any question for loops? Any question want to ask for loop? Okay, no question. Right, no. Right, so next up is while loop. Okay, while loop is basically the same as for loop. It's doing the same thing, but then there are certain conditions where you have to use while instead of for, and there are certain conditions where for loop is used instead of while. Okay, so it's good for us to actually know both of them. Okay, so that we can juggle with each of each of the methods. Right. So how do we write while loops? Okay, so let's take for loop for example. So for I in range 5, then in I. So this is basically saying that for I starting from 0 until 4 with an increment of 1. Okay, so let's try in the C way. So for integer I is 0, I less than 5, I plus plus. Right, so in this case, then you will see it's a bit clearer that the first one is the starting value for a counter. This one is the termination condition, and this one is the step. Okay, same goes with Python, but in Python you don't have to specify two of them. You just have to specify the terminating condition only, right? So in this case, if I want to specify that, I can write something 0, 5, then 1. Okay. This one is for loops, but then in while loop, is only contain the terminating condition only, right? So for us to write a while loop, let me change it to start at 0 and set 4 and 1, right? So how do we do this if we are using while loop? So firstly, we need to define a counter. Why is it erroring? Okay, yeah. So first we have to define the counter itself. The counter itself is not defined in the while loop. It's defined outside the while loop. So counter equals to 0. Okay, since we want to start at 0. Okay, then only we start the while loop. So the while loop is while counter less than 5, because we want it to end at 4. So it's going to be less than 5, right? So we write while and then the terminating condition, and then we put colon. Right, then we put colon. Then we do whatever we want. In this case, let's say I want to print hello world 4 times or 5 times. Yeah, hello world 5 times. And also we don't forget to increment the counter by 1, right? So how do we increment the counter by 1? So we can write counter equals to counter plus 1, right? Or we can use the shorthand notation of writing just counter plus equals 1. And also just notice that, just an information that in Python, we don't have the plus plus or minus minus operator. Yeah, so a bit sad. But then, yeah, we only have plus equals 1. So this is the shortest way of writing increment counter by 1. Or increment some value by 1. Okay, now let's give this a try. For your printout, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, so it's basically achieving the same stuff with for loops, but then it's a bit more tedious to write while loops. But then there are, as I mentioned just now, there are certain conditions where we can use, where we need to use while loop and where we need to use for loops. Okay, so now it's 12:59. So yeah, Siddharth, you there?
Yeah, so
Yeah,
just let's
okay.
do a short survey. So since this one is, we want to move a bit slower now to make sure everyone gauges everything. We are thinking of extending it a bit beyond 5 p.m. today or extending tomorrow morning. So I'm just going to launch a poll here to see if what people are okay with. Or if you are not free after 5 p.m. or you're not free tomorrow morning also, that's also possible. So please vote in the poll so we can see. Started the poll.
Sorry, could you speak louder?
Sorry. So there are two options now since we want to move a bit slower. So please vote in the poll to indicate whether you're okay with continuing after 5 p.m. today, or you want to continue tomorrow morning. You're okay with either, or you're not okay with either. So depending on this, we'll plan out the rest of the day and tomorrow morning.
Can't see the poll.
It's already launched. Check the poll tab. Yeah. So I'll just give you guys maybe 1 or 2 more minutes to decide. Okay, so there are around 53 votes now, and the majority say that they're okay with either. Um, so what we can possibly do is maybe extend a bit beyond 5, but continue tomorrow morning mainly. So we will continue with Daniel's session on Introduction to Python after lunch, and then after that we will start with Flask, and then we'll finish up Flask tomorrow morning. So tomorrow morning at 10 p.m. Is that okay with everyone? Perhaps just like 1 to 2 hours. It's tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. So not p.m. Okay with everyone. Let's make a poll here. So I've made a new poll to for the is tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. Okay. It probably won't extend beyond lunch tomorrow. It'll probably end by 12 because we'll finish up most of it today, and only the little bits that are left will continue tomorrow. So doing this will allow us to move a bit slower throughout the workshop. Okay, so yes, nearly everyone says 10 a.m. is okay. So right now it's 1 p.m. We will break for lunch and come back at 2 p.m. 2 p.m. 1 to 2 p.m. lunch break. We'll be back by then, and then we'll continue to around 5:10, 5:20. And after we finish at 5:20, we will come back at we'll come back tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. to finish up the workshop. So we've been keeping you guys here from 10 a.m. So have a good lunch and see you guys at 2 p.m. Yep. Thank you.
No point in blaming you, did not know. Oh, I'm gonna do this. Oh, you meant the world to me. Oh, I'm gonna do this on my own. No point in blaming you, did not know. Oh, I'm gonna do this on my own. No point in blaming you, did not know. I thought you were the one for me. That's why I gave you everything. Held you close by the stormy seas. Oh, you meant the world to me.